just can't believe here we are 9 years. 9 years, only one film has been repeated. And I think there's only one man that could draw this type of attention, could bring us back year after year, and that is Nicolas Cage. I think he's something of a myth. And I think that he means something different to a lot of people. I think you say Nicolas Cage, and if you are like my wife, you think I'm an insane person for preparing a PowerPoint presentation. But I think he means something different to all of you, whether it's the memes, whether it's taking him seriously. So what I wanted to do was take a second and really unpack who is Cage. And I think before we do, we have to spend a second acknowledging his reputation, which I think if you were there at the dawn of the internet, you know him mostly for his outsized performances. You know him for Cage Rage. You know him as a parody of himself. But I think the thing we're all forgetting is this man is an award-winning performer. Persona is curated. Persona is intentional. So we're going to look at him entirely from later people that have worked with him. We're not going to look at the man that he wants us to see him as. So this man, Nicolas Kim Coppola, this is actually his name. I don't know, for those of you that have been here year after year, if you knew, his name's not Cage. I'm sorry to break that bubble. But he's the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola. And in fact, in his first movie, he had a non-speaking role in Dazed and Confused, where he said he was mocked so relentlessly by people quoting The Godfather or Apocalypse Now to him, that he went and he changed his name. So there actually, as I was putting the finishing touch on this presentation, after all these hours of work trying to find stories about him, I found that someone else wrote a book that actually has the same premise. So shout out to a guy named Zach Schoenfeld that wrote a book on how Coppola became Cage. But he said the whole story of Cage's career is a man trying to be taken seriously while people around him were dismissing him. That he kind of had this chip on his shoulder from the beginning, being insecure about being Francis Ford Coppola's nephew, so he changed his name to be taken seriously. Ladies and gentlemen, Nicolas didn't accidentally become Nick Cage. This was a choice. This was his purpose, his calling in life. One of the stories that he tells is, it is one of his first leading roles. He says that the studio was so nervous about his outsized performance that they were going to cancel the movie, but his uncle had to make a spaghetti dinner for the studio. And what the author that wrote the book on Cage said is, this didn't really happen according to anyone he talked to. So a lot of the work of unpacking the myth is actually having to challenge the stories, the myth that he built around himself. So moving on to the next set, we're going to look at maybe some quotes from Cage. These are like quotes about himself that are going to appear. So just some things to know about him. He was inspired by James Dean. In his origin, he is a performer at heart. His own personal opinion is, he doesn't want to let any of his personal opinions speak out beyond the movie. He wants to be an enigma. He wants the movies themselves to be enigmatic. But the last thing to know about him is, in that video that CEO Cage Week said, Nick talks about work being the most important thing to him. The man shows up day after day, and this is the most consistent thread we see in his career. And he puts it all out there for us. So, separating man from myth. The core tension of Nicolas Cage is this. He owns a dinosaur head. He built a pyramid for himself to be buried in. He improvs lines like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But this chaotic persona that he wants to know is not who Nicolas Cage really is. If you talk to people that worked with him, they describe a man who is disciplined, who is obsessive only about the work. So, again, I think the recurring theme is this Cage persona is a choice. So the first person, this guy, Marco Kiers, don't backtrack me on how to say his name. He's been Nicolas Cage's stand-in for 20 years. This top screenshot is just from an AMA where somebody said, hey, tell me about Nick Cage. I hear he's just a crazy person. And he says, no, actually, the truth is Nick is a craftsman. He caters to his work through and through. If you talk to him more at length about Nick Cage, he says he's disciplined. He's prepared. He's relentlessly committed every single day he shows up. So a few stories about him. The first one is with Raising Arizona, which I think is maybe if you're looking for an early performance, this is the best example of a fully formed second performance from an actor. He showed up to the set with these small character quirks about HI that he would look at his watch constantly. And the Coens, second-time directors, say, we don't want the audience checking their watch constantly. So he just comes with a vision, but he defers to the creators. 2012 to 2016, He made 18 movies. Most of them are just kind of garbage that he made trying to pay off a $14 million debt to the IRS. The running theme of crew to those 18 movies is they'll say, we thought he would be this weirdo, but he was just one of the team. He was the first person on set every single day. In 2021, he made this small movie called Pig, where the crew said they were just shocked that he showed up and he just said to the director, hey, this is your vision. I'm here to make the best version of this possible. Actors that worked with him, Ethan Hawke says he's the first man since Marlon Brando to do anything interesting with acting. And one more quote from Cage himself, where he said, film acting is the only industry where you're criticized for working hard. In any other industry, it's considered a quality to be something to be held. So when most people mock this like outsized performance, this Cage rage, he sees himself just as a guy that's working hard, and he's putting it out there for us. He's not afraid to be seen working hard. John Travolta, you may remember from Face Off, he just talked about one of the easiest roles he ever had was playing Nick Cage, because all the acting choices are already made for you. He's so specific. Army of One, we all remember Army of One, that also stars Russell Brand. So one of his co-stars in Army of One said, I never met Nick. He was just Gary. He was just the character. A movie that none of us remember, he just showed up that dedicated every single damn day. Nicholas Hoult, we know him a little bit more than we know Wendy. He's worked with Cage twice at age 14 in his first American film. He said, I just felt safe and calm with Cage. And then a couple years ago, when he was with him again, when he played Dracula in Renfield, he said, it's just a marvel that he's Nick Cage, but then when he's in costume as Dracula, you see these like hundreds of influences he's drawing from. It's something to behold. Elijah Wood, Frodo Baggins, we all stand. We just watched Lord of the Rings for Christmas, I'm sure. Elijah Wood talks about learning about how to do line delivery from the way Nicolas Cage just said the line, it was a joke, that he just lets the word joke dance. He lets it stretch. He lets it sing, which is also why David Lynch can say he is the great jazz American actor, or he's the great jazz American artist of acting. So Cage is a contributor. We talked about him as H.I. in Raising Arizona. I think this is the same energy he brought when he was relegated to Straight to Redbox, which is an area where Steven Seagal and Bruce Willis, they kind of just went to die. They never came back from Redbox. But it's this attitude of Cage showing up and just giving everything he has that I think pulls him out of this prison that no one else was able to come back from. So some stories from those type of movies is there's this one movie called Willy's Wonderland. This is actually just from a couple years ago.
I was there in the theater. Don't worry.
Ours was there in the theater.
Yeah, you were there.
So this is the team that they said they had this script that they started shopping around, and a casting director said, you know, if we get a big name behind this, I think this movie could get made. And she knocks on Nicolas Cage's manager's door, and they say within 48 hours, Cage has not only read the script, but he signed on. And then Cage also brought his weird obsession with reptiles to say, hey, we need to like make these stand-in from the movie. We need to make those reptilian. He didn't just sign in and trust the vision, he warped the vision to match his weird obsessions. And then once he was on, the second story that they told us, they said, Nicolas Cage protected this movie from the financiers that were nervous, saying, no one's gonna see this, who's this movie for? And Cage takes this like weird independent movie where he's not even gonna have a speaking line, and he's just gonna say, hey, this is exactly the kind of movie that needs to be made. Something that's original, something that only he can bring his vision to. Anybody see the Verbal Wit Massacre? I think this is the movie where we see a young directing team, but also the movie where we learn the most about Cage. First off, actually, one anecdote is, it is N-I-C-K. Nick insisted on being Nick Cage in the movie. The author that wrote the book on Cage thinks this is because he just wanted to make it really clear, he's not Nick N-I-C, he is Nick Cage. So the team write the movie without ever meeting Nicolas Cage. And they said it took him a few times for them to get Nick to sign on, but once he did, it was important to Nick that he wasn't a meme the entire movie, that he was this vulnerable, sincere character. but they said they credit two things that Nick brought that resulted in greatness. They said it was his massive talent, but his desire to follow his inner voice. The writer said, what I love about him is he just doesn't give a crap about what everyone else thinks. He's doing what he finds interesting. He is not afraid to be an original person, and that is a rarer and rarer quality to see in actors today. So one of the things about this, these are going to be, as we're wrapping up, these are going to be the longest stories, but I think it's worth what we learn about Nick, where they're saying he may have signed on, but the movie starts talking about financing problems. It talks about struggling to find acting roles, these very public things that happened to him. Even though he was game, there were moments that he would come to set, he was kind of anxious about something. But they said, I think that's where we learn the most about Nick Cage, is that he was uncomfortable, but then you have these beautiful ad-lib moments where he actually ad-libbed the line in the movie, not the bees. Like, he's aware of himself. He ad-libbed the line to Neil Patrick Harris of, never let them see you shitting on yourself. That's something that he was just aware of at the time. And the last story, I think, is from the writer that said, in the first part of Unbearable Weight, if you remember, he's kind of not that present dad. They said that was the one thing that he insisted on changing, is that he's very present in the lives of his children. He said, I'm not this guy. And I think this is like the only instance where we see the intersection of Cage, the persona, the myth, and Cage, an actual person that's hardworking, that's dedicated, that cares deeply about the craft, and he kind of looked past himself, and he gets credit for how far he's willing to go to put himself out there, all in the name of entertaining us, the Cage Week viewer. So I leave you with this. I leave you with this thought of David Lynch. He stands alone. He stands tall. He is Nicolas Cage.
Yeah!